The sun was shining brightly. Everywhere was filled with sunshine. Calla Marello, a 7-year-old girl, woke up with joy. Today was her birthday, and her mother had promised her a big surprise. Calla was sure it would be the doll she had been dreaming of for the past half-year. Joy lit up Calla's eyes when the doorbell suddenly rang. She quickly jumped out of bed, eagerly running to the door. But her mother, Odessa, opened it first. Grandma Calla exclaimed with excitement when she saw the visitor and threw herself into the arms of Grandma Gloria. The old woman had come all the way from the village to attend her only granddaughter's birthday. Despite her age, Grandma Gloria could not miss this special day, Calla's 7th birthday. Grandma Gloria considered this day one of the important milestones because it marked the beginning of her granddaughter's adult life. In just 2 months, Calla would officially start 1st grade. Time flies so fast, Gloria thought quietly, her eyes welling up as she tried to hide her tears of emotion. You should tell her father not to start another family outside. Be grateful that you haven't sent this child to an orphanage. While her father has started a new life, you need to settle down with another man. You're still young, Gloria replied in a calm voice. At that moment, Calla stormed into the kitchen, having overheard her mother and grandmother's conversation. You're a traitor, she pointed her finger at her mother. I'm going to live with my grandmother and I won't go back to you. Go live with your Uncle Igor. Calla turned around angrily and ran out of the kitchen. She threw herself straight into her bed in her room and sobbed into her pillow. What fun is this birthday? What important day, what big surprise. Calla had been living with her grandmother in the village for the past 6 weeks. She resolutely refused to talk to her mother on the phone. At first this made Odessa angry, but then she just shook her head. If you don't want to, then forget it. Moreover, after what Calla had done, Odessa didn't want to force it either. Mom, take Calla to her room, Odessa said, her voice even but firm. But Mom, Grandma just got here, Calla tried to protest, her eyes wide and pleading. But her mother's cold gaze and stern words left no room for argument. Go to your room now. Odessa turned coldly and walked into the kitchen, signaling that the conversation was over. Odessa had changed a lot since her divorce from Cassian, Calla's father. Cassian had found another woman and made no secret of it. Since hearing the news of her husband's departure, Odessa seemed to have developed a hatred for her daughter, who looked exactly like Cassian. She often berated Calla, sometimes without reason, and even punished her daughter as if she were the cause of the breakdown of the marriage. Gloria had tried to dissuade her daughter many times, but Odessa seemed to be completely oblivious to her mother's words. Now, on Calla's birthday, Odessa seemed to be completely ignoring her daughter. Odessa, you can't act like this. Gloria tried to wake her daughter up again. Mom, I know what's right and what's wrong, Odessa nagged. On Calla's birthday, she still couldn't overcome her emotions and refused to interact with her mother. Only Gloria could convince her granddaughter to get ready. Little by little, Calla calmed down, even started to smile and accept gifts from guests. After all, it was her birthday. My dear daughter, I want to congratulate you on your birthday. Odessa hugged Calla and gave her a gift. This is the gift you've been wishing for a long time. I love you, my daughter. Her mother held out a beautifully decorated box. Inside was a beautiful doll. Thank you, Mom, she shouted with joy and hugged Odessa tightly. Just when everything seemed to be okay, Odessa changed her mind and Calla wouldn't have to go anywhere. Of course, she loved her grandmother very much, but she loved her mother even more. Recently, due to her parents' divorce, Calla felt the coldness of her father, who did not even wish her a happy birthday today, so she craved more love and care from her mother. I hope you won't be bored in the village with your grandmother and this doll, Odessa said, Calla's eyes suddenly dimming. In the end, her mother still didn't give up on the idea of moving Calla. The conversation gradually changed from birthday wishes to Calla's departure. Odessa felt frustrated that none of her friends, especially Igor, supported her decision to send her daughter to live with her grandmother in the village. Igor was surprised by this action and started to blame her in front of everyone. Odessa, you're wrong. You understand, if we were to live together, you would only have to leave Calla with your grandmother for a month or two, Igor tried to explain. I told my grandmother that I would be there for the whole year, Calla protested in a small voice. You don't understand, Odessa replied in a confused voice. Mom wants me to stay with my grandmother until the end of the summer, so I can rest before school. And you need to sort out your life with Igor too, Gloria reminded. Mom, why do you say that? Odessa scolded her mother. Odessa, I love you and want to marry you, Igor said softly as he proposed. I know perfectly well that you have a daughter, and now I feel guilty about Calla. Odessa was surprised. Why? Because I feel guilty that you want to send your daughter to live with your mother, even temporarily. Don't you see that the upcoming separation will hurt Calla? Especially for a whole year. I can understand. Even if it's difficult, if you send Calla to live with her grandmother just for the summer, okay. If you insist, Odessa said in an annoyed tone, then Calla will stay with her grandmother until the end of the summer, but then don't complain that Calla is bothering you. Do you understand? I understand, my dear, Igor replied and kissed his future bride. Then he approached the girl and held out his hand in a sign of friendship, but Calla pushed his hand away. It's because of you that Mommy doesn't love me anymore, she shouted, then threw the doll that had suddenly become hateful and ran into her room. Odessa was furious. Her heart felt like it was about to explode. Her daughter not only showed a strong personality but also opposed her mother. In mid-August, Odessa and Igor went to the village to pick up Calla. When her mother entered the house, Calla quietly walked out without saying a word. Calla, come back here, Odessa ordered, but her daughter did not even look back. For Calla, her mother had become a traitor, so there was nothing to talk about with her anymore. Grandma Gloria had prepared a play corner for Calla in the garden near the house, where there were toy cabinets, small furniture, and children's items. Calla picked up her favorite doll that her grandmother had given her and began to play. At this moment, Igor approached her. Calla, I want to talk to you, Igor said softly as he sat down next to her. Calla remained silent, acting as if she was alone there. Igor refused to give up and continued to try to find a way to open Calla's heart. I thought you and Mom were bad people, traitors, but they weren't. Sometimes adults make mistakes and hurt loved ones. I thought you were grown up and could understand me, but you're still a little girl. Calla replied seriously, I'm grown up because I'm going to first grade this year. That's why you told me that I was grown up and could keep a secret. What secret? Her curiosity got the better of her. If I tell you a secret now, will you promise not to tell anyone? Igor asked in a whisper. Calla just nodded, showing that she could be trusted. My mother really needs your support and help right now, because I'm going to have a little brother or sister soon. Really? Calla whispered. She had long dreamed of having a little sibling to care for and love. Yes, Igor whispered back. Can I take her out? Of course, because that's what big sisters are for. Big sister, Calla repeated, as if testing the words. The little girl closed her eyes in happiness. Calla had loved this unborn little creature from the very beginning. Sister, she repeated again. Calla quickly walked to the house, where her mother and grandmother were sitting on the steps. She stopped in front of Odessa and asked seriously, do you really need me? Of course, Odessa replied in surprise. She quickly stood up, went to her daughter and hugged her tightly. What's wrong? Why are you asking such a stupid question? Mom, do you love me? Calla looked up and watched Odessa's reaction carefully. I love you, Odessa replied. So when I have a brother, will you still love me? Calla continued to watch her mother's reaction carefully. Calla, why are you asking that? Odessa snapped. Who told you about the baby? Igor smiled sheepishly. He had been standing next to her and watching the conversation between Odessa and her daughter. Wait, I don't understand, Gloria said in surprise. What are you talking about, Mom? We were going to tell you this under different circumstances, but since things have turned out like this. Odessa laughed. Mom, you're going to be a grandmother again soon. Really? Gloria raised her hand happily. That's great. Then why are we still standing here? Come on in, we have to celebrate. We'll have tea and raspberry pie. Yeah, my favorite, Calla exclaimed happily. Her favorite was her grandmother's raspberry pie. She grabbed her mother's hand and pulled her into the house. It seemed that there was a reconciliation between Odessa and Calla. She forgave her mother for sending her to live with her grandmother in the Cornesen. However, Odessa still kept a certain distance from her daughter, although Calla did not notice it. At first, after returning from the village, things went smoothly. But as the days passed, Odessa's frustration flared up. Every word and action of Calla made her angry. Igor, seeing his wife often being upset with their daughter, thought it was just stress. He hoped that after the baby was born, Odessa's mood would stabilize and they would live happily as a normal family. Today, when Igor came home, he found a familiar scene: his wife sitting in the living room, angry, and Calla crying in her room. Calla, what's wrong? Igor asked, approaching. Tomorrow is September 1st, Calla sobbed. Mommy and I went to buy flowers. I picked a nice bouquet, but Mom said she wouldn't buy that nonsense. That's right, because on September 1st, people usually give roses. Odessa entered the room and defended her point of view again. Igor, can you imagine she chose daisies? Odessa, I understand that it was important for Calla to choose a bouquet for her teacher herself, Igor replied gently, but I didn't let her do it. Do you want people to think we're poor? Odessa snapped. People usually buy bouquets like that when they don't have money, and I don't want people to think we're poor. What an absurd stereotype! Igor was surprised. In this era, all stereotypes have been erased, so you should trust Calla's choice. I'm a mother and I know better what flowers to buy, Odessa said angrily. And you, my dear, Don't interfere in other people's business. What do you mean? Igor was surprised. You think we're a family, but you're just an outsider. I don't get me wrong. I mean, in things like this, you should trust me and not argue. Odessa firmly stood her ground. I trust you, but I have my own opinion. I think you should buy the bouquet Calla chose instead of hiding behind silly prejudices. Then go buy those damned flowers, Odessa said angrily. Okay, I'll go buy them. Igor was furious. Calla, get ready, we'll go to the flower shop and buy the bouquet you want. Really? Calla asked in disbelief. Really, Igor replied. I'll wait for you downstairs. He walked past his wife without even looking at her. He was so angry that he didn't want to talk to her anymore. Igor walked out of the apartment and slammed the door. You little bastard, Odessa quickly ran up to Calla and slapped her cheek. Your father abandoned us, leaving you to your mother. What are you going to do to make Igor leave me? Calla whispered fearfully, pressing her little hand to her cheek. For the first time in her life, she saw her mother so angry. What do you want? Odessa shouted. You're as useless as your father, Odessa. Stop! Igor's strong shout made Odessa feel like a bucket of cold water was poured on her. She looked at her frightened child, pressed her little hand to her cheek, and was afraid. Her hatred for her ex-husband made Odessa cruel to Calla, and the scariest thing was that she felt that this action was right. Because when she punished her daughter, she felt that she was punishing Denise, Calla's father. I really don't understand why I acted like this, Odessa sobbed. Odessa, this has gone too far, Igor said. I understand, but I can't ignore this, Odessa honestly admitted. I don't know how to control myself. Igor, maybe we should see a therapist, Igor suggested. Odessa realized that her husband was right, because next time she might lose control of her emotions and harm both her daughter and herself. She turned to look at Calla, who stood before her with a look of fear in her eyes. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Odessa moved forward to hug her daughter, but Calla stepped back. A wave of hatred and anger rose in Odessa's heart. Are you afraid of me? She asked angrily, but Calla just stared at her mother silently, not understanding why she was being treated like this. Igor, let's go, Odessa said, and Igor gently took his wife's hand and led her out of Calla's room. He sat her down on the sofa in the living room. My dear, your anger towards your daughter has gone too far, Igor said softly. I understand, but you can't control it, Odessa replied, her eyes welling up. When I look at Calla, I see my ex-husband, and it makes me want to hurt her, the way he hurt me. You're wrong. This is between Denise and me, not Calla's fault, Igor argued. Honey, what should I do? Odessa burst into tears. I'm afraid that next time I won't be able to control my emotions and will do something bad. First of all, you need to calm down and stop worrying. It's not good for the baby in your belly. Second, we need to see a psychologist right away so they can help you overcome this resentment. I will always be by your side, Igor said, hugging his wife and stroking her head. At this moment, all his thoughts were focused on how to help Odessa and Calla, who had become an important part of his life. Calla, now calm, hugged the doll she had brought from the village, the only toy in which she had found comfort during this time. Igor's heart clenched at the sight. He was determined not to let the relationship between Odessa and Calla get any worse. March came. Odessa regularly visited the psychologist, who helped her control her anger towards her daughter. Now Odessa could calmly face Calla's mistakes, and she also enjoyed helping her mother with the housework. In return, Odessa helped her daughter with her homework. Igor watched with satisfaction as Odessa and Calla's relationship changed. One day, he came home early and witnessed the change. Mom, I have so much to tell you, Calla shouted from the hallway as she took off her coat. First, you have to change after school and have lunch, Odessa calmly replied as she picked her up. But Mom, no, Calla, we agreed. First, complete the task. Then do the rest, Odessa said firmly without raising her voice or scolding. Igor approached his wife and hugged her from behind to support her. Yes, I will do it right away, Calla replied sadly and quietly bowed her head to do her tasks. She took off her school uniform and hung it carefully in the closet. Then she washed her hands and sat at the lunch table. Mom, you know, Calla, you shouldn't talk while eating, Odessa reminded. Why? Calla asked in surprise. At school, we always talk in the cafeteria. Because I might choke, she likes to talk about you, Odessa explained. Besides, it's not the right thing to do. Tomorrow I'll tell Irka that she's not pretty and not polite, Calla said. My daughter, you're wrong. Odessa suddenly fell silent, looking at her daughter and then at her husband with concern. Honey, what's wrong? Igor asked with concern. Igor asked worriedly, what's wrong, honey? It looks like it's starting, Odessa replied, her voice strained. Starting what? Calla asked curiously, seeing her mother's strange expression. Igor, call an ambulance, Odessa ordered. Are you sure? Igor asked doubtfully. The doctor said you're still 2 weeks away from your due date. Igor, Do you think I don't know when I'm going to start labor? Odessa shouted, her heart filled with fear. Okay, honey, everything will be fine, Edgar tried to reassure his wife as he walked out of the kitchen to call an ambulance. Mom, what's labor? Calla asked, her eyes wide with fear but also overcome with curiosity. She heard so many new words and didn't understand why they were being mentioned. Calla, not now, Odessa pleaded. I'll explain it to you later. The ambulance is on its way, Igor said as he returned to the kitchen. Should I get ready too? Calla asked. Odessa and Igor looked at each other, having completely forgotten about their daughter in the chaos. Oh my God, Calla, what should we do with you? Igor looked at his daughter worriedly. Odessa, you have to go on a business trip tomorrow, so what are we going to do with our daughter? Odessa started pacing back and forth, clearly nervous. Mom won't be able to come from the village so soon. What should we do? She picked up the phone and started dialing. Denise, hi, it's me. Listen, we have an emergency, and there's no one to take care of Calla. I have to go to the hospital to give birth, and Igor has to go on a business trip. Can you keep the baby for a few days until my mother comes? I know, but Calla is your child after all. After the divorce, you seem to have withdrawn. When was the last time you saw her? How could you do that? Odessa hung up the phone and looked at Igor. What did he say? Igor asked. He said he had family problems because he was getting divorced, and he didn't have time to take care of Calla. He would take care of his business and then take Calla home for a week. That's great, but what should we do? Igor worried. Okay, I'll call my boss and cancel the trip. Mom, I'm not important to Dad, Calla asked sadly. I am. It's just that Dad always thinks about himself first, and then about others, Odessa replied, trying to comfort her daughter. Just then, an ambulance arrived and rushed Odessa to the hospital. After 12 hours, Odessa gave birth to a healthy baby boy and named him Dmitri. Calla became a big sister, a dream she had long dreamed of. 2 months after giving birth, Odessa was discharged from the hospital with Dmitri, and they began to settle into life at home. Gloria from the village came to help her daughter, and Calla was always ready to help. Mom, can I take Dmitri out for a walk? Calla looked at Odessa with hopeful eyes. No, I told you, Odessa replied, annoyed. I'll drop the stroller, Mom. I'll be careful. Calla looked at her mother with hopeful eyes. But Odessa's heart was closed. Dmitri suddenly cried, which aroused Odessa's anger. No, you're just like your father, clumsy and clueless. Gloria looked at her daughter with a reproachful look. You're crossing the line, Odessa. I didn't say anything wrong, Odessa replied innocently. I'm just telling the truth, and you should go do your homework. She turned to Calla again. Mom, I don't have homework today, Calla replied softly. That's strange, everyone else has homework and I don't, Odessa said sarcastically. Darling, you know why? Gloria tried to stay calm, but Odessa's stubbornness annoyed her. Calla had been doing well all year, and now the teacher had decided to reward her. The students who had unfinished homework had to do it, but Calla didn't. You should be praising her, Gloria said firmly. Praising her? Wait until she graduates with a gold medal, then praise her. And that might not happen, Odessa muttered under her breath in anger. Calla felt her eyes sting, but she was determined not to let her mother see her weakness. She just clenched her fists and promised herself that in the future, she would be the best at everything, graduate with a gold medal, get an excellent degree at university, become a company director. Calla quietly left the room and decided not to ask her mother for permission to play or go for a walk with her brother. If necessary, her mother would ask her herself. Calla lay down on the bed and turned on the music. At that moment, Dmitri cried loudly from the next room, but Calla didn't budge. The humiliation had only strengthened her. And now, instead of crying, she set out to prove to her mother that she was no less than the other children. At that moment, Odessa burst into the room in a rage. You naughty brat, she shouted. Did you do it on purpose? I don't understand what you're saying. Calla looked at her mother with a bewildered look. You wouldn't let me go out with Dmitri, so you turned on the music to wake him up, didn't you? Odessa accused. No, Mom, I didn't mean to. Calla tried to explain. You just put him to sleep, Odessa, and you were screaming louder than the music. Calm down, Gloria entered the room. Calm down, Odessa shouted. This girl does everything just to annoy me, and you tell me to calm down. I've had enough. Mrs. Gloria didn't say anything more. She quietly pulled out her suitcase and started packing. Mom, what are you doing? Odessa asked in surprise. What are you doing? Don't you see? Gloria sarcastically said. I'm leaving here and taking Calla back to the village until the end of the summer, so you won't be disturbed by your anger. I'll go to school and ask for 2 days off for Calla, and we'll leave tonight. Then it's up to you, Odessa said, her voice full of hurt. She turned to look at her daughter, who was sitting still on the bed in a state of shock. So, Did you achieve your goal? Odessa asked softly, then left the room. Gloria looked at her daughter with reproachful eyes and shook her head. She walked over to Calla and sat down next to her on the bed. Don't be sad, Calla. Everything will be fine. Gloria hugged her granddaughter, giving her a little hope that everything would be fine. A month had passed since Calla had come to live with her grandmother in the village. Odessa and Gloria did not communicate with each other, creating a cold distance. The only one who suffered was little Calla, abandoned and deprived of her mother's love. Every evening, Calla returned home from her walk, hoping that her grandmother would say something about her mother's call. But Gloria remained silent. The old woman felt guilty about her granddaughter, wondering if she had done the right thing in bringing Calla to live with her. The latest news about Dmitri saddened Calla. The boy recognized his mother and father when they appeared and smiled brightly. But when he saw Calla, Dmitri did not recognize her and never smiled at her. Calla was devastated to think that she had become a stranger to her younger brother. One evening, when Calla returned from a walk, she found her grandmother pacing back and forth in the room, clearly worried. "Grandma, what's wrong?" Calla asked anxiously. "Oh, Calla," Gloria sighed heavily. "Our neighbor, Mr. Petrovich, has just come by." "Mr. Petrovich?" Calla asked carefully. "Yes, Mr. Petrovich," Gloria nodded in confirmation. "He wants to expand his farm and has offered to buy our house for a very good price. I also have some savings, so if we sell the house, we can move to the city and live closer to your mother." Calla's heart pounded when she heard this. Even though her mother was cold, she loved her mother and missed her very much. "Grandma, what about your garden?" Calla asked worriedly. Gloria sat down by the window, pondered for a moment, then turned back to look at her granddaughter. "You are my most precious treasure, and I will spare nothing for you. You are about to start school, so you need to live near your mother or near me. If there is a chance to move to the city, why not take it, Grandma?" "But what about your garden?" Calla asked worriedly. "I'm old. I don't have the strength to do gardening anymore." Gloria comforted her granddaughter. "My dear, you are everything to me." Calla hugged her and kissed her on the cheek. "When you grow up, you will buy me a new house, bigger and more beautiful than this one. I will live like a queen." That evening, Grandma Gloria called Odessa and agreed that Odessa would start looking for an apartment for her and Calla in the city. A week after the call, Odessa and her family went to visit Grandma Gloria. When she entered the house, Odessa looked at Calla and asked, "How is it, little rebel? Do you miss home?" "No, I'm fine with Grandma," Calla replied solemnly, although she really wanted to hug her mother. But she decided not to because she felt sad when she realized that her mother was giving all her love to her younger brother Dmitri and not paying any attention to her. Egor immediately hugged Calla and said, "Oh, you're so grown up." He was surprised to see her, but Calla just smiled back. She glanced at Dmitri, who was in her mother's arms. She wanted to go over and look at her brother, but Odessa's eyes told her that she shouldn't do that. "Grandma, can I go out and play?" Calla asked softly. "Why don't you stay with us?" Igor looked at her in surprise. "We haven't seen each other for almost 5 weeks. "I have something to do," Calla replied and quickly ran outside. She preferred playing with her friends outside to sitting next to her mother, who didn't pay any attention to her. After Calla left, Odessa immediately began discussing work. "Mom, we found some apartments for you." "Igor, show me." As she looked through the photos, Gloria's heart ached. She felt sad to give up this house, but there was no turning back, since she had already received the deposit. "I don't know." Gloria put the photos down. "You guys choose whatever you want. The only condition is that the apartment must be close to Calla's school." "Okay, Mom," Odessa replied. "Then when you find the right apartment, call me right away." "You and Calla have to move in by September 1st, Gloria told her daughter. "Mom, I want to discuss something with you," Odessa said, handing Dmitri to Igor and then sitting down next to Gloria. "Can we transfer the ownership of the apartment to you right away, so that we don't have to transfer it again later?" "When do you mean later?" Gloria asked in surprise. "Oh, I mean later in the future," Odessa explained with a laugh. "Are you planning to bury me earlier?" Gloria asked sarcastically. "No, Mom, you misunderstand me," Odessa replied. "I understand you very well," Gloria said sternly, "but I will make it clear to you that the apartment will be transferred to Calla's name right away, and you will have no rights to it." "You mean to transfer it to Calla? But what about Dmitri?" Odessa protested. "I'm very clear," Gloria replied firmly. "I don't want Calla to be homeless after I'm gone." "But you know," Odessa raised her voice. "Don't scream. This is not your house," Gloria interrupted, stopping the argument that was about to erupt. "I've already decided." Odessa turned to look out the window and sighed, feeling hurt. "So this apartment will belong to Calla, and Dmitri will get nothing." But that's okay, I'll find a way to get a part of the apartment back later and give it to Dmitri. 2 months later, all the formalities were completed, but at Calla's graduation ceremony, her parents were not present. After Gloria refused to transfer the apartment to her, Odessa limited her communication with her family. As for Dinas, as usual, he was busy with work that no one knew what kind of work. So Calla, despite having living parents, was like an orphan with no one but Gloria caring about her. Gloria did not leave the window, waiting for Calla to come home after her final exams. Last night, she had been studying late at night to review all her knowledge. "Calla, you should rest a little," Gloria said softly as she entered the kitchen. "No, Grandma, there's no time." Calla shook her head. "This is the last exam. When I'm done, I'll rest." "Oh, you're so stubborn," Gloria muttered and went back to her room. She didn't realize that she had fallen asleep while waiting. The sleepless night had exhausted her. Suddenly, she heard the door creak. Gloria rushed out into the hallway. "Grandma, I'm done," Calla shouted happily as she took off her shoes. "I bought a cake to celebrate." "Congratulations, my dear." Gloria hugged Calla tightly. "How did you score?" she asked as she saw the girl smiling happily. "You got a 10, Grandma. You're the only one in the whole class with a perfect score." "I don't doubt you, Calla. You're the best," Gloria replied proudly. "And I have more good news, Grandma." Calla was as bright as a polished coin. "What's the good news?" "Calla, you've been offered an internship at a company. The pay is low, but it's money, and it will definitely help us." "That's great," Calla, Gloria said happily. "Your persistence has paid off. It's a pity your parents don't know about it, and they don't care." Suddenly, Gloria felt a sharp pain in her chest. She tried to take a deep breath but couldn't. Her breathing was ragged, and cold sweat began to break out on her forehead. "Grandma, what's wrong?" Calla screamed in panic and rushed to her side. Gloria looked at her granddaughter with a hazy gaze, trying to tell her that she was in pain, but couldn't. Only mumbles came from her throat. "Grandma, hang in there, don't give up." Calla hugged Gloria tightly with one arm and quickly called an ambulance with the other. "Grandma, wait a minute, the ambulance is coming." Tears streamed in Sabala's face, fear choking her emotions. Calla feared losing her grandmother, the person she loved most in the world. When the ambulance arrived, they made a preliminary diagnosis of a heart attack and quickly rushed Gloria to the hospital. Calla accompanied her, holding her beloved grandmother's hand the whole way. "Don't worry, everything will be fine," a young doctor accompanying them smiled, comforting Calla. "Are you sure?" Calla asked, her voice filled with concern. "Yes, it's fortunate that you called the ambulance in time," the doctor replied. "In this case, the sooner the specialized medical care is received, the faster the heart will recover from the heart attack, and your grandmother will be well again." "Thank you," Calla whispered. "It's okay. That's our job," the young doctor smiled. Just then, the ambulance stopped in front of the hospital. Gloria was quickly taken to the cardiology department, leaving Calla waiting in the reception room. She couldn't sit still, pacing back and forth in the room and constantly looking at her watch. The wait seemed to last forever. Finally, Gloria's attending physician came out. "Hello, Calla," he said as he approached her. The tension was at its peak, and Calla could only nod in response. "We've stabilized your grandmother. She's no longer in danger." Calla breathed a sigh of relief, as if a great burden had been lifted from her heart. "Thank God, everything's fine," she said, hugging the doctor, her emotions overflowing. "The most important thing now is to take good care of your grandmother," the doctor advised. "You can go home now. Don't worry too much." "Yes, I understand," Calla said. She left the hospital, filled with gratitude and hope. As she stepped out the door, she heard a voice calling, "Girl, wait a minute." Calla turned and saw the young doctor approaching from the ambulance. "How is your grandmother?" he asked as he approached. "She's doing better. Thanks to you guys," Calla replied, her eyes shining with happiness at the knowledge that her grandmother had been saved. "Your grandmother was lucky to have you at home when it happened," the young doctor smiled. "Are you going home now?" "Yes. Why do you ask?" Calla was surprised. "Can I come with you?" he offered. "Sure," Calla replied, a little embarrassed. "Oh, my name is Yan," the young doctor introduced himself. "And I'm Calla," she laughed. The evening passed quickly as Calla chatted with Yan. She was happy to have met a new friend, and Yan told interesting and funny stories about his work. Calla couldn't remember the last time she laughed so much. "And then we put the patient on the stretcher. I turned around to prepare the medicine, but when I turned back, I saw him running away from me. I said stop, but he said no, I'm afraid of needles, and kept running." Yan recounted a funny story. "In the end, we had to chase him and convince him to give us the injection. It was unbelievable. It's amazing." Calla laughed. But then she remembered her grandmother and tears welled up again. "Yan, tell me the truth. Will my grandmother get better?" "Of course." Yan took Calla's hand and squeezed it gently. My grandmother is a very strong person. She won't be defeated easily, thank God. Calla breathed a sigh of relief. But after she gets out of the hospital, she needs special care, a good place to rest, good nutrition, and no stress. I will do everything to take care of her, Calla affirmed, not realizing that time had passed quickly. We're home, Calla said with regret. The little girl didn't want to part with her new friend. So fast, so sad, Jan sighed. Hey, do you have any plans tomorrow? Calla frowned in thought, trying to remember her plan. But because of her grandmother's illness, everything flew out of her mind. I have to go to school tomorrow morning to pick up my internship instructions, and then I want to visit my grandmother. Can you come with me to visit my grandmother, Gloria? Jan asked. Of course, Calla replied happily. I don't think she'll mind if you come. See you tomorrow. Then Jan smiled and waved to her. See you tomorrow. Calla waved to Jan and walked into the building. Her heart was pounding like a bird in a cage. It seemed that this feeling was mutual. As she entered the empty apartment, Calla felt loneliness envelop her heart. For the first time in 12 years, her grandmother didn't come to greet her. Calla walked around the apartment, silently thankful that the crisis was over and that Gloria was slowly recovering. She didn't want to think about the future when her grandmother was gone, because then Calla would be really lonely. Calla decided to call her mother and dial her number, even though she knew that the relationship between them was not good. After all, Gloria was still Svetlana's mother. Hello, a familiar woman's voice rang out. Hello, say it. Svetlana's cold tone made Calla confused about how to address her. Mom, it's me. There was an uncomfortable silence. Then Svetlana asked in a flat voice, what do you want? Grandma's in the hospital with a heart attack. She's alive and stable now. Oh, okay, I see. Bye. Svetlana hung up without asking anything more. But you didn't even ask which hospital she was in, Calla whispered into the phone. The last thing she heard from the other end of the line was Dmitri's voice asking, Mom, who is it? Nobody, honey. Nobody, Svetlana replied before hanging up. Calla clutched the phone to her chest. Her mother didn't care where her grandmother was in the hospital, as if Gloria were a stranger. Okay, Calla, do your best for Grandma, she told herself, but couldn't hold back her tears. All the emotions and pressures that had built up that day burst out, causing her to sob. Those tears were a release, helping her to clear away the pain in her heart, leaving her with hope for a better future. A month later, Gloria was discharged from the hospital and began her recovery at home under Jan's careful care. Jan became a close friend of Calla's family, and she spent most of her free time with her grandmother, fearful that something bad might happen again. That day, after finishing her internship at a law firm, Calla told her grandmother about the day's events. Grandma, a client came to the firm today. Her ex-husband just passed away, and she wants to know if she can contest his will. What is she contesting? Gloria asked in surprise. A 2-bedroom apartment that he left to his daughter from his first marriage, Calla replied. She wants to know if she can get it back, or at least part of it. It's unbelievable. She's so greedy, Gloria said indignantly. We told her she couldn't do that. First, they were divorced, and second, the apartment was bought before they got married. So she has no right to do anything. So what did she say? Gloria asked. She called us a bunch of scammers and said she would find another firm with better lawyers, Calla replied. That's too much. Gloria was indignant. Just then the doorbell rang. Calla, it seems like someone is coming. It must be our dear man. Gloria smiled. Yes, I heard you, Grandma, Calla replied, blushing. She quickly went to the hallway to open the door. Calla's eyes lit up with happiness and love when she saw Jan. Hello, my dear, Jan said as he entered the apartment, 2 bouquets of flowers in his hands. He handed one to Calla. For me, Calla asked in surprise as she took the bouquet, her nose touching the petals. For the month of happiness you gave me, Jan said and kissed her lover lightly on the forehead. Oh, I have nothing to give you, Calla said awkwardly. You are the greatest gift to me. Jan hugged Calla tightly. Calla, don't keep the guests standing in the hallway for so long, Gloria called from the room. I want to say hello to him too. Sorry, we're coming in, Calla replied, blushing with embarrassment. Grandma, Gloria. Hello, Jan said as he entered the room, handing Gloria another bouquet. This flower is to thank you for raising Calla. You know your granddaughter is a gem, Gloria replied proudly. So, Gloria, how are you feeling today? Jan asked. As usual, every time he visited, the first thing he did was to check on Gloria's health, taking her blood pressure. Gloria sighed sadly. What a pity. Dinas was a good husband. But Calla didn't seem to hear her words. She continued, It's been half a year since Dad passed away, and I inherited that apartment. The woman who came to the law firm for consultation before turned out to be Dad's ex-wife. She sued me for the apartment, but she lost. According to the court's decision, I am the sole heir. Calla and Gloria moved into Dina's apartment after the renovation. During that time, Jan was always by their side and helped them with everything. Then came the new year, a holiday that Calla always looked forward to like a child waiting for a miracle. That day, when she returned home from school, Calla was very happy. "You can't imagine how beautiful it is outside," Calla said with excitement as she entered Gloria's room. "The snow is falling heavily, floating like feathers. Let's go for a walk, Grandma." "Okay, honey," Gloria agreed, smiling. Just then, Calla's phone rang. "Hello, it's Calla," she answered. "It's me." Calla Svetlana's voice rang from the other end. Calla almost dropped the phone in surprise. Her mother, who had been ignoring her all this time, was now calling. "Hello, Mom," Calla replied, trying to keep her voice calm, though inside she was shaking with tension. "Sorry, I didn't behave properly," Svetlana said, her tone conciliatory. "I wanted to talk to you." "Why are you talking like this?" Calla replied, annoyed. Svetlana feigned indignation. "Maybe you just miss me." Calla sneered, unable to believe her mother. "You've become so cold, my daughter. What did your teachers teach you?" "Oh, anyone who talks about the past is blind in one eye," Svetlana sneered, trying to lighten the mood. "And anyone who forgets the past is blind in both eyes. Come on, leave the bad in the past. I really want to see you." "For what?" Calla asked, surprised. "I just wanted to see you, see how you are, and talk to you." Svetlana tried to keep her voice cheerful, but Calla still didn't understand what her mother really wanted. "About what?" Calla asked in disbelief. "About everything," Svetlana replied cheerfully. "I missed so many years of your life." "But it's not your fault," Calla replied sarcastically. "Yes, I'm sorry. So shall we meet at the cafe tonight and talk?" "Okay," Calla replied without much interest. "See you tonight, then, my daughter," Svetlana said before hanging up. Calla hung up, not knowing how to feel about this phone call. She looked out the window, but the white snowflakes no longer brought the same joy as before. "What's wrong, honey?" Gloria asked worriedly. "Nothing," Grandma Calla replied coldly. "Just Mom called." "What does she want?" Gloria asked. "I don't know." Calla shrugged. She moved away from the window and sat down next to Grandma. "Mommy said she had something to tell me." "What a surprise!" Gloria exclaimed, clapping her hands together. "She's been ignoring me for all these years, and now she suddenly remembers that she has a daughter. That's what's confusing me," Calla confessed. "I shouldn't have gone to see her." "Then don't go, Grandma," Gloria said firmly. "But if you don't go, you won't know what she needs from you," Calla replied. "Then go with Jan," Grandma Gloria decided. "He's a sensible person. He won't let you get hurt. And be careful not to let your mother provoke you." "Oh, Grandma," Calla sighed, holding her hand tightly. Calla was grateful to her grandmother for her support during the time her mother had abandoned her. That evening, Calla and Jan went to the cafe where Svetlana was waiting. When she saw Jan with Calla, the smile on Svetlana's face disappeared. "Who is this?" Svetlana asked unfriendly. "He's your boyfriend," Jan, Calla introduced. "How long have you two known each other?" Svetlana began the interrogation. "Half a year," Calla replied. "Oh, really?" Svetlana snorted. "What do you mean?" Calla asked, sitting down across from her mother, looking straight at her. Svetlana was confused. She hadn't expected Calla to be with someone. "It's strange you haven't paid any attention to me for the past 12 years, but now you suddenly remember that you have a daughter," Calla said, her voice full of sarcasm. "You're such a fool," Mom. Svetlana shrugged. "Since Dmitri was born, I've forgotten everything and everyone. All my time has been devoted to your brother. You can't imagine how talented, handsome, and special Dmitri is. I think it's time for you to meet him." "For what?" Calla asked, surprised. "You used to dream of taking care of him, playing with him, and helping him," Svetlana said. "So what's stopping you from helping your brother now?" "Helping with what?" Calla asked, her voice full of annoyance. "I know you have 2 apartments. Dmitri and I will stay in your father's apartment for now, but your grandmother's apartment, I think you should give it to Dmitri. After all, Dmitri is her grandson. You should do it." Calla laughed sarcastically and leaned back in her chair. "Forgive me, Mom. When am I supposed to do that?" "The sooner the better," Svetlana said firmly. "Dmitri is 12. He is handsome and talented, and he needs a house of his own." "Fine, but what does that have to do with you?" Calla continued sarcastically. "To me he may be a genius, but to you he is nothing." "Why nothing?" Svetlana looked at Calla in amazement. "What are you talking about? I did everything myself so that you and my son would not know each other," Calla said coldly. "Dmitri is a stranger to me." Then Calla stood up and ended the conversation. "I am not God, and I do not give my things to strangers, especially my apartment." Jan looked at Calla's mother with contempt. "And yet you dare to say that my lover was incited by me to go against his mother just because he was afraid of losing his share. She is so shameless." Jan shook his head. unable to hide his contempt. It's unbelievable looking at her behavior. It's as if Svetlana is not Calla's daughter and mother. As they walked out of the cafe, Jan hugged Calla, who was still shaking with anger. Tell me, how is that possible? Calla asked in a voice filled with indignation. She can sacrifice everything for her son, but she acts like you don't exist. Darling, someone like that isn't worth your sadness. Jan gently kissed Calla's forehead, comforting her. Let's go home to Gloria. She's worried about you. Calla just nodded, feeling lucky to have someone who is always by her side and protecting her, like Jan and Gloria. What is nothing? Svetlana looked at Calla in surprise. What are you talking about? I did everything myself so that you and my son would not know when she got home. Calla told Gloria about the meeting with her mother. It was too much. Gloria was indignant. Nothing was enough for her. What are you talking about? Calla asked in surprise. You're talking about the apartment where Svetlana lives with her family, Gloria replied. That apartment belongs to me. What? Calla was surprised. Yes, that apartment belonged to my grandparents, and when he broke up with Svetlana, my father transferred the ownership to me. Really? Calla turned to the window, a plan already forming in her head on how to deal with her mother. That evening, Calla told Gloria the whole story of the meeting at the cafe. Gloria listened to her granddaughter and became even more indignant at her daughter's greed. It was too much, Gloria muttered, and rightly so. Her phone rang. She called at the right time. Gloria grumbled as she looked at the screen and picked up. Hello, Mom. I want to thank you so much, Svetlana's forced voice said from the other end. Thank you for what? Gloria asked, trying to keep her cool. You raised my niece well, but I think you should take care of your own daughter, Svetlana said sarcastically. Apart from the abuse and arguments, she has learned nothing good from you. You mean I've been a bad mother? Svetlana interrupted, her voice shrill. Okay, that's enough, Gloria replied calmly. Did you call for something or just to argue? Mother, I want things to be fair, Svetlana said, her voice full of provocation. Calla has 2 apartments, and Dmitri has none. Then let Igor take care of your son. You can't expect everything from someone else, Gloria replied firmly. So you mean I have to take care of Dmitri myself? Svetlana protested angrily. Yes, Gloria replied uncompromisingly. You may have raised Calla, but that doesn't mean you have the right to demand anything from her. What a shame, Gloria sighed. Seeing her starting to worry, Calla gently took the phone from her. Hello, Mom. It's me, Calla said. You're right. I think you should transfer your apartment to me, Calla continued in a smart tone. Calla, what are you talking about? Gloria protested indignantly, but Calla only winked at her mischievously. That's great, Svetlana exclaimed happily. I always knew I could count on you. We'll meet in a week at the cafe, and I'll bring the transfer papers. Okay, see you, Calla said before hanging up. Calla looked at Gloria and smiled slyly. Honey, what are you planning? Gloria asked curiously. You're going to teach me a lesson about greed, Calla replied, her smile never fading. I didn't know you were capable of that. Gloria laughed and hugged her granddaughter. I want to see what you'll do. The show will be in a week at the cafe, Calla said, her eyes sparkling. For the next week, Calla prepared carefully to carry out her plan to teach her mother a lesson about greed. The little girl felt heartbroken that her mother was willing to abandon her to protect her son Dmitri, but on the contrary, she still felt lucky to have such a wonderful grandmother like Gloria. She was determined that Dmitri would never have the chance to experience that happiness, because Svetlana had deprived herself of the right to be Gloria's grandchild. Because of Svetlana's influence, exactly a week later, Calla and Gloria were waiting for Svetlana's arrival in the cafe with anticipation. Calla just wanted to see the look on her mother's face when she realized that although she had gotten what she wanted, it would cost her more. Finally, Svetlana entered the cafe, her face beaming at the sight of her relatives. Mother, Calla. Hello, everyone, Svetlana said as she approached the table. You're fine, right? Gloria grumbled, clearly unsympathetic. Don't be so picky, Svetlana feigned. What would you like to drink? Tea or coffee? Calla asked in a formal tone. How about a glass of champagne to celebrate our family reunion? Svetlana suggested with a beaming smile. Oh, how ridiculous, Gloria sneered. Your family is you, Igor and Dmitri. Mom, what are you talking about? Svetlana tried to look offended. You guys are my family too, don't be dramatic, it's not worth it, Gloria replied coldly. Come on, Grandma, calm down, Calla said, taking Gloria's hand. Then she handed a file to Svetlana. Mom, I've prepared the papers for Grandma's apartment. It's yours now. Svetlana quickly took the papers and began to look through them. Thank you, daughter. I didn't expect you to do this. Justice has finally been served. So you're saying that Grandma's apartment is yours now? Calla asked for confirmation. That's right, Svetlana replied. Then I have a question, Calla said, her voice stern. When will your family move out of the 3-room apartment you're living in? The apartment you're currently occupying illegally. What? Illegally? Svetlana was stunned. When we divorced, Dad transferred the ownership of that apartment to me. Mom didn't even know about it because she deliberately didn't tell me. Wait, are you kicking us out of the 3-room apartment and into a 1-room apartment? Svetlana asked, her voice filled with anger. I wanted my grandmother's apartment, and I got it. What's wrong? Calla asked, her tone sarcastic. You're such an ungrateful daughter, Svetlana shouted, causing the other diners to turn around and look. Only then did she realize that her daughter had defiantly tricked her. Fine, keep the apartment. I don't need it anymore. Let me keep the 3-room apartment we live in. Svetlana changed her tone, clearly panicked. What a quick turnaround, Calla sneered. But here's the final thing, everything will stay the way it is, and I will never have any contact with you or Grandma again. Agreed. Agreed. Svetlana stood up abruptly. Thank God I don't have to deal with people like you anymore. She turned on her heel and walked out of the cafe. Gloria watched her daughter, thoughtful. What was that all about? She asked Calla. I decided to teach you a lesson. I'm sick of you only caring about us when you need something from us, Calla explained. I forged the papers for your apartment. False papers, really? Gloria asked, surprised. Yes, I just wanted to joke with my mother, but now I feel sad, Calla sighed. Why are you sad? Because you never had a real mother. She only appeared when she could take advantage of you, Calla replied with deep sadness in her eyes. I understand, Gloria hugged Calla, but you still have me. Yes, you are my greatest happiness, Calla smiled. Come on, let's go home. Yana's waiting at home with good news, Calla said, deciding to leave her sadness behind. 10 years had passed. Calla graduated from college with a red diploma and was offered a job at the company where she had interned. Gloria often joked, everyone has a doctor like everyone else, but I have the head of the department myself. Gloria still lived with Calla and her husband in a new house in a high-end residential area. Calla had kept her promise since she was a 7-year-old child. Now Gloria lived in a luxurious house just as her granddaughter had promised, thanks to the family's attentive care. Gloria's health was still maintained at a stable level. There was nothing to worry about. Calla rarely remembered her mother. She tried to erase Svetlana from her memory. Occasionally, the two of them ran into each other in the city, but both of them acted as if they didn't know each other. And today was no different. When Calla was on her way to work, she stopped by a cafe for a cup of coffee. As soon as she entered, she immediately saw her mother sitting with her husband and son. Igor nodded to Calla, and she nodded in return. However, her mother turned away, muttering something to her husband, to which Igor could only shrug. Dmitri's strange behavior did not escape his notice. Mom, who is that girl? Dmitri asked curiously. A very evil and greedy person, Svetlana replied sarcastically, deliberately speaking loudly so that Calla could hear. Why? Dmitri continued to ask. Because she was ungrateful. She was raised, cared for, and then left like she was not needed. Calla approached the family table and replied coldly. No one left me. I left myself. That's right. Let me think, Calla said sarcastically. A 6-year-old willingly left such a wonderful mother to live with her grandmother in the village. Surprisingly, it was my mother who abandoned me, and I didn't put up any resistance. And if I'm being honest, I'm glad my grandmother did. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened to me, Calla continued, her voice full of bitterness. Leave? I cared for you and loved you, and you chased me away. Svetlana shouted. Oh yes, you gave me so many slaps for that great love, Calla replied sarcastically. You oppressed and humiliated me to show your feelings. How interesting. Do you love your son in the same way? The resentment that had been building up for so long overflowed, and Calla could no longer hold back her emotions. What are you talking about? Igor asked with a frown. It was clear that the version that Svetlana had told him about Calla leaving to live with her grandmother was different. Ask your wife, and if she has any conscience left, she will tell you the truth, Calla said. And now I have to go. Then she turned and walked quickly out of the cafe. Calla regretted arguing with her mother. She had lived a peaceful life without having to worry about such things, but today she decided to stand up and defend herself. Calla decided not to tell Gloria about what happened in the cafe. She wanted to forget it and erase it from her memory. A week passed. Calla was sitting at her desk, studying documents for a new case, when there was a knock on the door. Calla Denisovna, you have someone to see you, said Assistant Yana as she entered the room. Who is it? Calla asked. A young man. He said he needed to see you urgently. If you need to see him, let him sign in and wait, Calla replied. But immediately Dmitri entered the room, pushing Liana aside. Calla Denisovna, should I call security? Liana asked worriedly. It's okay. I'll see to him, Calla reassured her assistant. As Yana left the room, Calla asked her brother, "What's so urgent?" "We don't know each other, but I'm your brother, Dimitri said, his voice filled with concern. Calla's intuition told her that this visit would not be a good one, and she wondered what else she could expect from this family. "Mother forbids me to contact you, but I don't know what to do. My father is seriously ill and needs urgent surgery, which can only be done in the capital, but we don't have enough money." Dimitri continued, his voice growing tense. "What information do you want me to get out of you?" "Be clear." Calla couldn't contain her impatience. "We need $1 million right away," Dimitri said, his eyes filled with hope. "And why am I involved in this?" Calla asked, surprised. "After all, my father raised you." Calla looked at her brother in disbelief. "He was good to you, wasn't he?" "And what came of it?" Calla continued to question. "Of course I'm grateful to him for that," but Dimitri replied, confused. "But you paid us back with the 3-room apartment we live in, right?" Calla continued. Dimitri hesitated. Then he pleaded, "Please, sister, help us. If something happens to father, I don't know how we and mother will survive." "Okay, I'll think about it," Calla replied evasively. "Bring me your father's documents." "What documents?" Calla asked. "What the hospital provided, like medical records, treatment orders, test results." "We don't have those. They're all at the hospital." "Which hospital?" Calla asked. "The provincial hospital," Dimitri replied. "Okay, I need time to think. Leave your phone number with my assistant. I'll call you back." "Thank you," Calla, Dimitri said happily, and quickly left the office, closing the door behind him. Calla sat in silence for a long time, staring at the door. At first, she was going to refuse to help her stepfather, but the more she thought about the situation, the more inclined she was to help. After thinking it over, Calla picked up the phone and called her husband. "Honey, hi. Are you busy?" "No, honey," Yan replied gently. "I always have time for you." "What's the matter? Can I ask through my channels about his health?" "Why do you want to know?" Yan asked, concerned. "The thing is, Dimitri came to see me today. His father needs money for surgery." "How much?" Yan asked. $1 million, Calla sighed, her voice sad. "Is it that serious?" "It seems so," Calla replied. "Honey, don't worry too much. We'll talk about it tonight. Everything will be fine," Yan reassured his wife. Calla felt so lucky to have such a wonderful husband. She could hardly wait until the evening. When she got home, Calla immediately went up to Yan's study on the 2nd floor. "Yan, do you have any news?" Calla asked. "Sit down." Yan pointed to the chair opposite. "I have some news for you, but first let's have dinner." At this moment, Gloria entered the room. "Dinner first, my dear grandma. There's no rush tonight," Calla replied softly. "Dimitri came to see you today. His father is seriously ill and needs money for surgery." "Anything else?" Gloria frowned. "He used to allow people to torture you, and now he wants help." "Honey, I've been inquiring through my channels about your stepfather's health," Yan said. "And what?" Calla asked nervously. "He's sick, but not as bad as I thought. Actually, he's not sick enough to need $1 million for surgery. He just needs a simple operation, and it's free under the health insurance." "Then why does Dimitri need $1 million?" Calla asked, her eyes filled with indignation. "It's just a ploy to get money from you," Gloria sighed. "That boy is like his mother, only interested in other people's money." "Let me ask him," Calla replied with a sly smile. "It's time to teach him a lesson." The next day, Calla called Dimitri and asked him to meet her at work. At the appointed time, Dimitri walked into Calla's office. "Hello, Dima. Tell me, how much do you need?" "Sister, I need $1 million for an emergency surgery for my father. If you don't help, he might not make it." "I looked into your father's medical records," Calla said, looking straight into Dimitri's eyes. "How did you know?" That Dimitri was confused. "Didn't you know my husband worked at the hospital?" Dimitri was flustered, trying to say something, but the truth was already revealed. Calla continued, "You were trying to trick me into getting money. Did you think I wouldn't know?" Calla looked straight at Dimitri, trying to keep her composure as his anger flared. "How are you going to get money out of me?" Calla asked, her tone filled with sarcasm. "Did your mother put you up to this?" "I hate you," Dimitri suddenly shouted, standing up from his chair and starting to pace the room. "Do you know what it's like to have your friends have the latest phones and you have to use the old ones because your parents can't afford new ones? Or to wear sneakers until they fall apart, while I want something new and trendy?" "You know," Calla asked, surprised, "I live with my grandmother, living solely on her pension. I don't even have a phone, not even an old model. My sneakers are torn, but my grandmother and I have to patch them up and sew them back together. We save every penny, from food to clothes, so I know what it's like to live in poverty. And you, a spoiled son, are complaining about not having new shoes or a fancy phone. You need to learn to take responsibility for your words," Calla continued, her voice hardening. "What are you going to do to me?" Dmitri asked, challenging. "You can report me for fraud," Calla said, pointing to a small camera hanging on the wall, its red light flashing. "There's a camera in my office, and everything that happens in here is recorded." "Your mother was right. You're stingy," Dmitri said angrily. "Not stingy, but fair," Calla replied with a cold smile. "Now get out of my room and never show your face to me again, or you'll regret it." Dmitri stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. Calla stood up from the table and walked to the window. Today she had completely severed all ties with her greedy and jealous relatives. She realized that Dmitri's selfishness and jealousy were something he had inherited from his mother. But Calla had no regrets about anything in her life. After all the suffering she had endured in the past, fate had blessed her with a wonderful and loving husband and a respectable grandmother. With people like them by her side, no betrayal could scare her anymore.